everybody. Welcome back to Vinyl Fetish up here in the Vinyl Attic, where we're in our 100 count through. And you know what? We're going to do the Kinks album, but I just looked at where we are on the count, and we're at number 33. And in the land of vinyl, 33 is a sacred number. We can't just let 33 go by, the 33rd album. And by the way, we're taking our own. I'm from the South, so we're going to take a little bit of time to get through this 100 countdown, count up, count through. 33 and a third RPMs. There's only one album that we should be talking about today, and that happens to be our third Beatle that we are talking about, George Harrison's 1976 album, 33 and a third. Of course we have to talk about this album. Came out when he recorded it when he was 33 and a years old. Those were the days when you were 33 and a third, same as the rotation. We got to talk about this great record. There's obvious ones, we're trying to stay away from the obvious ones. We could talk about All Things Must Pass ad nauseum, but I really want to talk about this record because in many ways this is one of his great comeback records. George in the mid-70s was having a bit of a rough patch. He was going through a lot of drama. His wife was leaving him for Mr. Eric Clapton. And Patty and Eric had been a thing. Layla. This woman has the greatest love songs of all time written about her, including Something and Layla. And finally, she left George for the Clapper. The breakup was sort of chronicled a little bit on his 1974 album, Dark Horse, which was really George at his nadir. He was going to go on tour and record this album, and at the time, he got laryngitis. So he recorded an album and went on tour with laryngitis. The album is... It's hard to love. There are some people that really love Dark Horse because it's so raw, but to me, it's just... Other than the Far East Man song he does with Ron Wood, there's just nothing to love on that album for me. The follow-up, Extra Texture, read all about it, was much more listenable, much more R&B, soul-y, but also very depressing because not only was George going through a divorce, he was in the grips of a lot of cocaine and alcohol use, and his mojo was missing. So what happened? So in 1976, he's finally free of the Beatles contract. In 1976, the EMI contract is ended, and all four Beatles are free to do their own thing. In some ways, this sort of liberates George to sort of find his voice and to start on a new project. He's recording at his studio at Henley on the Thames, which is a place that I've been to. We talk about it in one of the Beatles videos that I did. I haven't been to Henley. I've only been to the front gate of Henley. And he's surrounded by some friends. He decides, instead of producing it himself, he's going to use his friend Tom Scott, the horn player, the saxophone player, to help him out. So he's got a co-producer. He's got Billy Preston back with him. He's got the amazing bass player Willie Weeks. And there is renewed excitement to make this record. And part of the record is kind of a screw you. Because one of the other things he was going through was the lawsuit for My Sweet Lord. The notion that My Sweet Lord was plagiarized from the Chiffons' He's So Fine. And he was tied up in those court battles and really just wanted to just kind of let go. But also, more importantly, he was in love. He had met A&M Secretary Olivia Rios, and they had fallen in love and were soon to be married and have a baby, Danny. And he was in the grips of sort of a renewed joy of life that really came through on this record. So he starts making this record, essentially recording at home at his home studio. In the process, gets hepatitis, what he calls hippietitis, and has to take a break from the record. The cool thing about this record is that a bunch of the songs have been around since the late 60s. There's a song called Beautiful Girl, that was probably originally about Patty and then was sort of rewritten for Olivia. It's All Down to What You Value was sort of reimagined because of his love for Formula One race car driving. That goes all the way back to All Things Must Pass, if not before. So there was these old songs he was kicking around, and then there were some really new ones, including songs inspired by people that he was meeting, like Lord Buckley's manager, who talked about living in a Crackerbox Palace. And it's funny because I always think about Crackerbox Palace as Friar Park, but it really means just sort of a little hovel that you live in. Hovel. And this song, which is a song that is written about the lawsuits. There's Dear One. There's kind of a return to the spiritual. He'd sort of left that with living in the material world, and then went off into the material world and did a bunch of cocaine and kind of forgot about God. And so he kind of comes back to God on this record. And it all really sort of comes together. It comes out in November 1976. It's an interesting time because it's the end of the Apple contract. There's also the exact same month, EMI Capitol in America releases the Best of George Harrison, which kind of bummed him out a little bit because half the songs were solo songs and half the songs were Beatle George songs, like Here Comes the Sun. But that he was competing with his own album. So this record comes out. He's looking good. Look at this young man. Look at that perm. Oh my gosh. With his bicentennial glasses on. This is a great package. And the music really sort of comes together. It's a lot of it's upbeat. We hear some of our friends from Monty Python. He'd been hanging out a lot with Eric Idle and working with Monty Python. So they end up on the song track. He did 3 videos that Eric Idle produced or directed from this record. He did a lot of promotion for it, including appearing, and I'll never forget watching this on Saturday Night Live in late 1976 with Paul Simon. He had a little skit at the beginning because Lorne Michaels had offered the Beatles $3,000 to reunite for the show. Apparently, that was the night that John and Paul were hanging out at the Dakota and almost went down and showed up at Saturday Night Live. But there's George, and he's getting his check for $750, 1/4 of the money offered. And does an incredible acoustic set and also debuts 2 of the videos from the album. He's kind of everywhere. Even there is a great interview that's released. This is a real collector's item. This is Dark Horse Records presents a personal music dialogue with George Harrison at 33 1/3. This was given to DJs, and it's George talking about each song. And so the idea is that they'll have this record on one turntable in the radio station, and then when it sets up the song, then they play the next song. And I used to listen to this over and over and over again. There's so much insight into this, including about this notion of second chances. There was certainly competition among the 4 Fabs after the breakup, and George came out strong with All Things Must Pass and some big singles. Was on top of the charts with Give Me Love. And then the wheels kind of came off, and he just sort of lost it. And then Paul, John started doing well, and Paul started doing really, really well with Wings, and George was kind of out of the picture, and it wasn't looking like he was doing anything like he had been doing. He wasn't keeping up with where he'd been. So he started working on other things, including starting his own record label. This was the first record out on Dark Horse Records. That's his label. He had been working with other bands, including this band called Splinter. This is a really great album that George produced from 1974 that should have been the Dark Horse record. I mean, I like to think of this as the actual 1974 George Harrison album instead of Dark Horse. And working also on film projects, including sort of revitalizing the British film business with his handmade film projects, and doing a lot of other things other than music. And this was the thing that brought him back and saying that there's still a lot of gas in the tank when it comes to George Harrison. This record wasn't huge. It had a few, minor singles. Over the years, it's gained stature. The follow-up that came out in 1979, George Harrison, which was the first George Harrison album I bought the day it came out, February 1979. I remember buying it at Oz Records, taking it home with the great song Blow Away and Here Comes the Moon. Such a good record. But this record was really sort of the 70s message that you can go down into the dumps. You can, be big and then crash and lose it all and climb back out. And the way that you come out is through love of God and love of a particular person in your life. The beautiful girl song, the intertwining guitar. There is sort of George really perfecting his slide technique on this record. There is much more guitar on this record. Extra Texture was a lot of keyboards, and there's a lot more of just interplay of George on this record with these great songs. There's some really great songs on this record that are favorites. I mean, he does Bing Crosby's True Love, which is just, it's sort of a little bit of silliness. It's twoo. It sounds like, a line from a movie. But one of my favorite songs on this album is Pure Smokey. It's about Smokey Robinson. He just wanted to say to Smokey Robinson, I love you. Thank you for the music. Thank you for everything that you've given me. I remember Smokey Robinson. In the 60s, Bob Dylan said Smokey Robinson was America's greatest poet. It was just a chance to, instead of waiting till someone dies. And I think about this record all the time when people die. Even like when John Lennon died, all these songs came out about how great he was. And Queen had a song, and Elton John had a song, and everybody had a song about John Lennon after 1980. Why wait until they die? Why not tell them while they're here that you love them and how much they mean to you? And it's the most pure song, pure Smokey. A pure love song for a person because of what they've given to the world. I love Pure Smokey. Yeah, so I mean, we'll probably talk about more George as we go through our 100, but this record is a beautiful statement about coming back from the depths, pronouncing love, and using that as your sort of ladder out. I love these people. I love this house. I love God. I love this woman. I love this music. And it is just something to really soak in, especially when we're surrounded by a lot of negativity and anger and blah, blah, blah. There is just this sense of love that comes from this record and really launched George into the next phase of his career of making a lot of really good music. All right, I just wanted a little, since we were at 33, I wanted to do 33 and a third, George Harrison. Great album from 1976. It sounds so good. Oh my God, it sounds so good. All right, we're going to get back to the live album, the Live Kinks album next time. I just wanted to spend a little bit of time with George. When all four of them were together, he was officially my favorite Beatle. I had a picture, the picture from the White Album put on a t-shirt at Woolworths at North Lake Mall to proclaim George as my favorite Beatle. I love the love that comes from this record. George still matters. This record matters. This music matters. You matter. Let's talk about it.